Hello from Kazan, Tatarstan in Russia. Once again, Jay Smith. You can see the Kazan River behind me, the Kremlin, the mosque, and the Orthodox Church. I'm going to respond to a video that's been going around and become very popular. We've been hearing about it in London, put out by the Taqiyya Productions, basically put out by Brother Abdullah and Brother Issa. Abdullah and Issa, who are both down at Speaker's Corner every Sunday in their get-up, in their regalia, with their headdresses and long robes, holding their flags, their Hizb ul-Tahrir flags with the Shahada on it. They're quite a spectacle to watch. And they have been putting together quite a few videos, primarily, many of them trying to support Islam and attack Christianity. And this one video in particular I'd like to point out. It's a video supposedly proving that I like to lie. Taqiyya is the word they use, and they give some very clever back and forth snapshots of videos I've done in the past. Specifically the video that I did almost 6-7 months ago on whether or not the Bible has been corrupted. And I say very categorically, we have not corrupted our scriptures, and I stand by that. We have not corrupted our scriptures. But what do I mean by scriptures? Obviously, it's the Receptus, Textus Receptus. That is the very original documents. Those have not been corrupted. And then they jump to another video where I say there are 40 verses that have been added. But stop and think. You didn't you didn't listen to the entire video. I made very specific claim that these 40 verses are found in the KJV, the King James Version, one of the first translations in the English language done by King James in 1611. When you look and see what King James did in 1611, and please go back and see that video again, he didn't have access to the earliest manuscripts of the Textus Receptus. He didn't have access to those. We still don't have access to the originals, certainly not. But certainly the earlier manuscripts like the Sinaiticus, the Alexandrinus, the Vaticanus, the John Papyrus, the Chester Beatty manuscripts, the John Ryland's manuscript, all of these which we now have access to, many of which were discovered in the 1800s, they don't have these 40 verses in there. And I said that the King James Version has added these 40 verses. Now, we are very clear in all our, certainly manuscripts, or certainly the Bibles, the versions that we use today, we are very clear that these verses are not found in the earliest manuscripts. And that's why we put there a line usually before and a line usually after these verses, warning the reader that these verses are not found there. Why Abdullah and Issa think that's lying, or somehow that's not honest, that's dishonest, I don't know. I think it's because they picked and chose those parts of the video that they wanted to project to you. And that's easy to do with videos. I think that's very disingenuous. Maybe that's Taqiyya. Maybe they're using Taqiyya. Later on, they certainly did use Taqiyya, because they mentioned that I failed 2 doctorates. Wow, that's a new one. I'd like to know where they got that information from. First and foremost, I have 2 master's degrees already. I've got a bachelor's degree as well. I'm in the process of doing my doctorate. I've not failed any doctorates. I don't know where they got that from. But they obviously wanted you to know that, because I think by saying that, that seems to discredit me. Shame on you. Be careful of your sources. And you should have asked me first before you made things like that, those kind of claims. Taqiyya, lying. When you look back and you look and see exactly why they're saying that, I think what their confusion is they assume that which happened to the Quran, and we know what happened to the Quran, the earliest manuscripts, and this is where the problem is, the earliest manuscripts of the Quran that were supposedly created at the time of Uthman in 650. According to Al-Bukhari, in volume 6, verses 509 and 510, we do have reference there to the fact that these manuscripts that did not agree with the final copy that was made under the auspices of Uthman, these manuscripts were burned. And it's right very clear. Look in Akbar 510. They were burned. Now, stop and think. That's in your own traditions. We're not making that up. We're not trying to impose on you. Read Al-Bukhari and tell me if I'm lying. I'm not lying here. Interestingly, the fact that your earliest manuscripts were destroyed, were burnt by Uthman, seems to suggest that the same thing must have happened with our scriptures. And you're looking everywhere to find these burnings. Now, you have listed a whole list of edicts on your screen, on your video. You have their Athanasius' Easter letter, written in 367. There's no reference of burning of any manuscripts there. I don't support Athanasius or what he did or who he was. He was basically he was a church father in 367. That was in the area much, much later. The Galatian decree, you got it spelt wrong. It's not Galcian, it's Galatian decree in 496. Is there any reference of burning there? Pope Hormidus' decree in 514, was there? I looked and scoured the internet to try to find out where you're getting your information on this. We couldn't find a thing on Hormidus about any burning of any manuscripts. The Edict of Theodosius, excuse my pronunciation, the first, in 381. This man was known for persecuting people that stood against him. That's true, but he didn't burn any manuscripts that we're aware of. The Edict of Theodosius II in 435. Again, we're still looking. Please help us, Abdullah. And please help us, Issa. Where are these burnings you're talking about? The edict after the Council of Nicaea, well, that could be almost anything. Council of Nicaea was in 325. We are still after Council of Nicaea. So I guess somewhere along the line, somewhere in the last 1600 years, there may have been someone burning some manuscripts. But look at the dates. 367, 496, 514, 381, 435. What are we talking about? We're talking about the time post-Constantine. See, Constantine, well, I don't know. I have to be careful here, but I don't care. I have an awful lot of respect for what Constantine did. He put and brought church and state together, and whenever you bring church and state together, the state overtakes the church, corrupts the church, and that's exactly what we see happening. From that time on, there is an enormous amount of persecution going on. There is an enormous amount of corruption in the church, and I do not, by any form of manner or by any thought of the imagination, support what happened with Constantine and after. I don't have to support that because that doesn't follow the precepts of Jesus Christ. No, the church up until the 4th century was basically a pretty pure church. Then in the 4th century, everything went wrong. Every one of these people that you're talking about are post-Constantine, post-4th century. I'm not going to support them. I don't need to. But I still can't find them burning manuscripts. And they're so late anyways. Whatever manuscripts they did burn are much, much later manuscripts. These are not the original ones. Nothing like what we have at Uthman. Uthman basically is just 20 years after Muhammad's death. Why do you burn manuscripts 20 years after Muhammad's death? Unless, of course, they don't agree with the original one. The one that was rewritten according to what we have there on Al-Bukhari. Rewritten by Ibn Thabit, Zubair, Alas, and Harith. So be careful when you say that we're lying. I'm not lying by any stroke of the imagination. I may not be saying what you want me to say. You may not like my facts, or you may not like the position I take. And I certainly would not say that you're lying. I think what has happened here is that you're confused. Or maybe you're stretching the truth. Maybe you're trying to impose your agenda here, and so you want to try to create something that's, or somehow what we've done wrong. I don't know what your agenda is. Obviously, we are very careful to show when there is any additions. We do know that these 40 verses were added much, much later, and that's one reason why the King James Version put them in their translation. They weren't in the original manuscripts. And I still stand by that. We've not corrupted those original manuscripts. If you can prove me wrong, then do so. The ball's in your court. I leave it for you, Abdullah Inissa. This is Jay, over and out.